My name is Alexander Kowalski, but everyone calls me Alex. I am feeling pretty numb right now, but also relieved in a weird way. Just need to get this out somewhere. I am 34, come from a Polish immigrant family. My grandfather came through Ellis Island with basically nothing but the clothes on his back. My dad built a plumbing business from scratch that put me through college. I am the first in my family to get a degree, and I have always been proud of where we came from and what my family has accomplished. My girlfriend, Jennifer Mitchell, works in PR brand management. We have been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months, and the wedding was scheduled for 5 months from now. Her family is paying for most of it, but I am covering about 35%, with some deposits in my name. We had already booked the venue, DJ, photographer, catering, etc. Looking back, there were subtle signs throughout our relationship. Jen would always introduce me as Alex rather than using my full name, or she had changed the subject when people asked about my background. She would make little comments about elevating our brand as a couple, but I never thought much of it. When we first met at a charity gala, she seemed genuinely interested in my family's immigrant story, but over time, she had rolled her eyes when I spoke about Polish traditions, or suggested visiting my relatives in the old neighborhood. Yesterday we were addressing wedding invitations together when she casually mentioned she wouldn't be taking my last name. This surprised me, since we had never discussed it. I told her it was her choice, but I was a little disappointed. Then she dropped the bomb. Your last name just sounds lower class. No offense, but I have worked really hard building my personal brand, and I cannot have a name that sounds like that. I just sat there stunned. She said it so matter-of-factly, like she was commenting on the weather. I asked her to clarify what she meant by lower class, and she actually repeated it, emphasizing each word like I was slow. Lower class. You cannot be serious, Jen, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This is my family name we are talking about. She sighed, dramatically. Alex, be realistic. Do you know how my clients would react if I suddenly had some unpronounceable Polish last name on my business cards? They would think I am unprofessional. Unprofessional because of my heritage? I could feel my face getting hot. It is not just about me, she continued, waving her hand. Think about our future kids. College admissions officers see a name like Kowalski, and what do they think? Plumbers and factory workers, not CEOs and doctors. I cannot believe I am hearing this, I whispered. The room felt like it was spinning. Look, she said, patting my hand condescendingly. We can talk about this later when you are being more rational. I stood up slowly. I need some time to think. I managed to say, I will call you tomorrow. Once I got home, I pulled out all our wedding contracts and confirmed something I remember. Our venue had a partial refund policy, graduating based on how far out we were from the date. We were still in the window where I could get back about 60% of our deposits, which wasn't perfect, but better than nothing. The financial hit would be rough, but not as bad as marrying someone who fundamentally looked down on my family and heritage. That night, I made my decision. I called the venue first thing in the morning and canceled. Then I went through all the vendors where I was the primary contact, and canceled those too. Between the partial refunds and what I will have to eat in costs, I am out about $5,000. But the weight that lifted off my shoulders told me I had made the right choice. I texted her simply, I have canceled all the wedding arrangements in my name. I cannot marry someone who thinks my family name is beneath them. There is no us anymore. Please don't contact me again. Then I blocked her number and all social media. 3 weeks in, and I am starting to feel like myself again. I know I dodged a bullet. Update 1. The first 2 weeks after I ended, things were surprisingly quiet. I figured Jen was processing or maybe even realized she had screwed up. She is not a terrible person overall. We had 3 good years together, and she has many good qualities. But that comment revealed a fundamental incompatibility I couldn't ignore. Around week 3, her texts started coming in from random numbers. First, just asking to talk, then getting increasingly desperate, then angry. I would block one number, and she would text from another. I saved screenshots of everything but didn't respond. One text really stood out. You cannot just throw away 3 years over one comment. That is not how relationships work. But that is the thing. It wasn't just one comment. It was a window into how she truly felt about my family, my heritage, and ultimately, me. Another message. My mother says you are being childish, and that real men don't run away from problems. The irony of her mother calling me childish while her daughter was using burner phones to harass me wasn't lost on me. Then, one Saturday morning, my parents called saying Jen and her mother had shown up at their house to talk about the misunderstanding. My dad, bless him, told them point blank, "My son made his choice. There is nothing to discuss. Please leave before I call the police." They left, but not before her mother made some comment about ungrateful immigrants. My dad later told me more details about the encounter. Apparently, they would brought a reconciliation gift, a business card mock-up with Jen's name and my last name hyphenated with hers. Hers first, of course. After that incident, I changed my routines for a couple of weeks, taking different routes to work and varying my schedule. It was exhausting, living like that, constantly looking over my shoulder. A week later, I started volunteering at a local animal rescue center to get my mind off things. That is where I met Kara, not her real name, a vet tech who works there. We hit it off immediately over a beagle that kept trying to escape his kennel. There was just something so warm and genuine about her from the moment we met. During coffee after our third shift together, I was upfront about my recent breakup, but didn't go into all the drama. She just nodded and said, "Sometimes the universe has to clear the path for better things to come along. No judgment, no probing questions, just understanding." Things with Kara progressed naturally, and we started dating casually. She is the complete down-to-earth, kind, and loves animals. We are taking things slow. Both of us have been burned before and want to build something solid. That is when the real harassment started. Jen somehow found out I was seeing someone new and completely lost it. She started showing up at my workplace. One of my coworkers noticed and pointed it out to me. I documented each instance with photos and timestamps. Then she started calling all the wedding vendors I had canceled with, pretending to be me and trying to reinstate the services or change details. She claimed I had made a mistake and wanted to continue with the wedding plans. Thankfully, most vendors required ID verification or passwords that she didn't have. One vendor called me directly asking what was going on, which is how I found out. The florist was particularly disturbed, telling me, "She called claiming to be you," saying the cancellation was a mix-up. When I asked for the security password, she became hostile and started ranting about how you were being manipulated by some woman named Kara. I had to call each vendor individually to warn them about potential impersonation attempts. The worst came when Jen sent a mass email to everyone on our wedding guest list, including my boss and several colleagues, claiming I had been physically abusive to her during our relationship. And that was the real reason we broke up, completely fabricated. I have never laid a hand on anyone in my life. In this email, she described fictitious incidents, claiming I had thrown her against a wall after a disagreement about wedding plans, and had monitored her phone and isolated her from friends. She even attached a photo of a bruise on her arm that she claimed I had caused. I later learned from a mutual friend that it was from a cycling accident, months earlier. My boss called me into his office immediately, but to my relief he said, "I have known you for 5 years. This doesn't sound like you at all." He suggested I get legal advice right away. My friend, who is a police officer, advised me to document everything and file for a restraining order. So, that is what I did. I gathered all the evidence, the texts from random numbers, photos of her in the parking lot, statements from vendors about her impersonation attempts, and the defamatory email. I filed the restraining order paperwork. The hearing is scheduled for next month. I am nervous, but feeling confident with all the evidence I have collected. Meanwhile, things with Kara have been good. She is incredibly supportive and understanding about this whole mess. When I had to tell her about the restraining order and why, I was worried she would run for the hills, but she just held my hand and said, "This isn't about you. It is about her inability to accept consequences." After 3 months of dating, I took her to dinner at my parents' house. I was nervous. My mom can be pretty protective, especially after the ex fiasco, but they hit it off immediately. Kara brought homemade pierogi she had learned to make from a YouTube tutorial, saying she wanted to learn more about my cultural background. My mom pulled me aside afterward and whispered, This one actually sees you. Don't let her go. Kara makes me feel valued for exactly who I am, polished last name and all. We are not rushing anything. Both of us agree that solid relationships need time to develop. Update 2: After filing for the restraining order, Jen went surprisingly quiet for a while. The hearing went smoothly. I presented all my evidence, texts, photos, vendor statements, witnesses, and the judge granted a 1-year restraining order. She is prohibited from coming within 500 feet of me, my home, or my workplace, directly or indirectly. What surprised me most, she actually admitted to sending the texts and emails, but claimed it was because I had led her on and discarded her without proper closure. When the judge asked about the false abuse allegations, she said she had exaggerated out of hurt feelings. The judge wasn't having any of it, noting that ending a relationship is not abuse, regardless of how it is done. Her mother glared at me throughout the entire hearing. When the judge announced his decision, I heard her mutter something about getting what is coming to you. That piece lasted about 3 weeks. One night, I got home to find 12 voicemails from an unknown number, all from Jen, ranging from tearful apologies to rage-filled rants about how I had ruined her life and humiliated her with the restraining order. In one particularly disturbing message, she said, "You think that piece of paper will keep me away? You think you can just move on with that trailer trash, and I will disappear?" I immediately sent the recordings to my lawyer, who forwarded them to the court. The judge issued a warning that any further violations would result in a 30-day suspended sentence. Meanwhile, things with Kara continued to get better. We dated for a full year before I proposed during a hike with her rescue beagle, the same one that brought us together. We set the date for 6 months later. After everything that happened with Jen, I wanted something simple and genuine. Just us celebrating our love surrounded by people who actually support us. When Jen somehow found out about our engagement, small town, word travels. She filed a small claims lawsuit against me for $40,000 for emotional distress from the canceled wedding. Her claim stated I had fraudulently misrepresented my intentions by ending our engagement. I was served with papers at work, which was humiliating enough. Reading through the complaint was surreal. She claimed I had always intended to break the engagement and had strategically timed it to keep the deposits. She even argued that my relationship with Kara was proof I had been planning to leave all along. My lawyer actually laughed when I showed him the paperwork. Unless you signed a contract specifically promising to marry her regardless of what happened, this will get thrown out. He was right. The judge dismissed it in about 10 minutes, noting that ending an engagement is not legally actionable unless there are specific damages related to financial loss, not emotional distress. The judge was particularly unimpressed with her attempt to characterize my timing as fraudulent, saying, if anything, the plaintiff should be grateful the defendant ended things before they incurred non-refundable expenses. Jen's face turned bright red at that comment. After the dismissal, her lawyer pulled her and her mother aside for what looked like a very stern conversation. It seemed like even her own lawyer was getting fed up. Then came my turn. After consulting with my lawyer, I filed a defamation suit regarding the email she sent to our wedding guests claiming I was abusive. Since allegations of criminal conduct are considered defamation, per SE, and she had no evidence to support her claims, we had a strong case. Filing that lawsuit was one of the hardest decisions I have made. I didn't want to prolong any contact with her, even through the courts, but my lawyer convinced me it was necessary. The initial hearing was tense. Her lawyer immediately asked for a sidebar with my attorney and the judge. When they returned, my lawyer explained they wanted to discuss settlement options. It seemed the reality of potentially losing a defamation case, which could seriously impact her PR career, was finally sinking in. Rather than go to court, we offered a settlement. She would post a public apology acknowledging her false statements on her LinkedIn profile, where many of her professional contacts would see it, for 30 days, and pay my legal fees of $3,200. Her mother apparently had a meltdown when she heard the terms, but their lawyer advised them to take the deal. The alternative was potentially much worse, financially and professionally, for Jen. They accepted within 48 hours. It stated that she regretted making false claims about Alex Kowalski's character and behavior during our relationship, and acknowledged these statements were made out of emotional distress and had no basis. In fact, within days of posting the apology, mutual acquaintances started reaching out to me. People who had distanced themselves after her email were suddenly sending messages of support. One friend wrote, "I always knew something was off about Jen's story, but seeing her admit it publicly, I am sorry. I doubted you for even a second." About our wedding, I have hired 2 off-duty police officers as security, just to be safe, and provided them with photos of Jen and her mother. Our wedding coordinator took the threat seriously, setting up a check-in system where guests must show ID matching our guest list. We have also asked guests not to post any details about the venue on social media until after the event. Last week, we had our final meeting with the officiant to go through the ceremony details. After discussing the vows, Kara mentioned she wanted to change her last name after the wedding. Seeing her fill out the name change intention paperwork with Kara Kowalski filled me with an emotion I cannot even describe. Not because I care about her taking my name, but because of what it represents. Final update: our wedding day was perfect, albeit with one hiccup. As predicted, Jen tried to crash the ceremony. Our security spotted her trying to enter through a side garden and escorted her out before I even knew what was happening. One of my groomsmen told me later that she was claiming to be a distant cousin, but security had photos of her and weren't fooled. The most beautiful moment was during our vows. Kara had kept part of hers a surprise. Looking me straight in the eyes, she said, "I am honored and proud to take your family name, a name that represents generations of hard work, courage, and love." There wasn't a dry eye in the place. My parents were absolutely beaming. We have settled into married life beautifully. The restraining order has been effective, though we did have 2 more incidents. First, Jen tried to message me on LinkedIn with what seemed like an olive branch. "Congratulations on your marriage. I hope we can be civil." But she couldn't help adding, "Though I am surprised, Kara was okay with your last name, given her community college education." I blocked her immediately. Second, about 2 months ago, her mother actually showed up at my office asking to speak with me. When the receptionist called me, I declined and had security escort her out. I heard her screeching about justice and how I had destroyed her daughter's reputation on her way out. My boss was incredibly understanding and actually added both of them to our building's restricted visitors list. After being married for almost a year, Kara and I decided we were ready to start a family. The best news of all, we are expecting our first child in about 5 months. It is a boy, and we have decided to name him after my grandfather, the immigrant who came through Ellis Island and started our family's American journey. I cannot think of a more perfect tribute to my heritage. Our Christmas cards this year proudly display our lower-class last name, and every time I see it, I am reminded of how narrowly I avoided a lifetime with someone who was ashamed of my family's history. Kara jokes that Jen inadvertently gave us the greatest gift. If she hadn't revealed her true colors when she did, I might never have found real happiness. As painful as it was at the time, I have to agree with her. Edit. Many of you have asked for an update on Jen. Last I heard, through mutual friends, she is actually doing better professionally after moving to another city and refocusing her career. She is dating someone new, and I genuinely hope things work out for her. Whatever issues she had with me and my background, I don't wish her ill.